Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com, and we're here today at the Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage, and we're here today with Kristin Rogers, Art Education Manager at Progressive Corporation. Thanks for meeting with us today, Kristin.
Thomas, thanks for coming.
You guys have put together this awesome exhibit here at the Maltz Museum, and it's really rare stuff that people aren't going to normally get to see, are they?
Not usually. Progressive keeps kind of a close wrap on the art that we've been collecting for over 30 years, and it's usually part of our workplace culture and not very often assembled in an exhibition outside of our walls.
How did this collection get started? Because it is really well known as one of the finest corporate collections of contemporary art really in the world, and it started with Peter Lewis, of course, and his wife Toby Lewis, right?
Peter Lewis and his wife at the time, Toby Lewis, in the late 70s began an art collection in a company that, for all intents and purposes, otherwise sells car insurance.
That's right.
And they did so to create a unique workplace culture, something that was unprecedented and gives people who work at Progressive not only a great place to work, but it also incentivizes this sort of creative thinking, and a lot of the innovative products and services that Progressive brings to the market is probably due in no small part to the art that we're surrounded by.
And the corporate culture that they've created. And the Maltz Museum, of course, is focused on diversity and tolerance. They have a great permanent collection here that's just fabulous and great exhibits. What about this exhibit? Talk about the title and talk about how this exhibit ties into diversity and tolerance.
The Maltz Museum really does have an outstanding mission and program, and it was not long into a conversation that we were having with the Maltz Museum that we saw some very nice analogous parallels between some of the work that they do with diversity and tolerance and a lot of the work that Progressive is doing, again, within our workplace culture, dealing with diversity and inclusion. So their D&T is our D&I. So we have
right.
a diversity inclusion effort. And with the diversity inclusion efforts that Progressive is really amplifying right now, this was initially an exhibition, kind of an in-house exhibition. This was a show that traveled to Progressive contact centers around the country and was served as the backdrop for professional development workshops, kind of training about diversity and inclusion,
really?
And what it means to be inclusive and what it means to have a workplace that is not only sensitive but kind of rigorously attuned to diversity and inclusion.
It's called About the Right of Being Different. And so what does that mean? What do all these works share in common?
All the works, there's a dialogue happening with the works, and the conversation is intended to spill over into the people who are engaged with the exhibition. And About the Right of Being Different is, suggests the conversation about diversity and inclusion and gives us sort of encouragement to explore what it means to be othered in society, what it means to not just tolerate, but to accept and include people who are unlike us and accept and understand the challenges of differences.
Well, this is a fabulous exhibit. It looks beautiful, and just to see it here installed at the Maltz is quite a scene. You want to show us a couple of works in particular that you particularly like?
I'd love to. Yeah, there's one artwork, a painting actually, that's by Michael Hayden. It's called Cleanup. And on one hand, you could make an interpretation for this artwork that has a lot to do with maybe the disproportionate judicial system. We have, if you look, you can see that there's a kind of a mostly African American prisoners, kind of on view, staged in this environment, cleaning up a roadside kind of like scenic view. And there's one white officer holding the gun, But on the other hand, so that's the sort of the surface read on that, has a lot to do with this judicial system and the disproportionate application of judicial system toward African Americans. But for me, this artwork opens up a little bit more and really begins to even address the overarching theme of the exhibition. If there's one kind of message that we're trying to get across with the show, it has a lot to do with the way in which our intolerances and our insensitivities to diversity and otherness has a lot to do with our upbringing, or it's socially constructed. It's not things that we're born with, it's things that we learn along the way. And so in this painting you see a constructed environment. There's this, what's happening on the surface is underpinned by almost like a simulated reality. And so there's this kind of like suggestion here in this painting that things aren't always as they seem, because what's underneath what we see is sometimes the thing that builds what we believe.
That's great. This is a very almost easy painting to read in so many ways. What else you want to show us? You've got a local artist?
We have a couple local artists or area artists in the show, and this is a great artwork by Susan Umbenauer. And it kind of, you could say intentionally, begins to mimic one of these like Donald Judd minimalist sculptures.
Sure.
But if you kind of drill in further, you can see it also starts to look, maybe even more so from the side, like maybe somebody's spinal column. And Susan Umbenauer, in her work, is kind of addressing this a type of diversity that is often one of the more, less mentioned types of diversity. In the show we tried to assemble works that obviously address all the banner diversities, gender and race and whatnot. But here's an artwork, and we have a few others in the show that kind of deal with the way that we sometimes are othered because of health matters. So Susan Umbenauer's daughter is quadriplegic, and this artwork is kind of a support structure, a suggested support structure for a stronger spine. And so there's this kind of like beautiful, poetic, and built strong kind of structure that for her is kind of a requiem for her daughter.
These are very thought-provoking. I know you have a self-guided tour that folks can do when they get here to the Maltz.
Yeah, one of the things we've done is we've assembled it's really intended to be an interactive exhibition. It's not so much, don't get me wrong, it's a very sexy show. It's beautiful, there's a lot of nice objects.
It really is.
But we really intend, again, for this conversation to be happening. So we designed a curriculum. And it can be engaged, the curriculum can be engaged upon with groups or kind of an individually guided thing. And what we've done is we have several activity challenge questions, ways in which people can make associations with artworks. There's questions in here that say things like, find an artwork that uses a narrative structure for its content, or find an artwork whose material informs the meaning of the artwork. And so right away we're asking people to, again, make connections between the artworks, pull out of the artworks their own interpretations. It's real important for us that people understand this exhibition as a content-loaded, kind of heavy and engaging exhibition.
Right.
Interactive. We almost want to consider people who come here participants, not so much viewers.
And they are, and I noticed a lot of the artists call themselves performance artists. A lot of these are documentations of performances. And the idea of the object is really stretched here in this, because it's more than just the object. It's what's going on in the painting or in the photograph. It's the social issues around it. And so sometimes you miss it if you just look at the surface of these, as you said, and it's really not, that's not the story at all. It's
not, and you do drill in, and thankfully the artworks kind of lend themselves to the suggestion that you're supposed to drill in. There's very few artworks in here that are simple, kind of like one-pass artworks. They're very kind of like eye-catching on the one hand, but they're also very mind-catching too. Yeah.
Well, it's great the way you put this exhibit together, not only for your employees, which is a really profound thing, and maybe it goes to the success that Progressive has had, being now the third largest auto insurer in the country, but also that you've been as generous to take it to the public and to take it here to Cleveland at the Maltz, where people can actually come see it. Because I've been over and I've been fortunate to see the work at Progressive, but most people can't just walk in off the street, so this is where they come to see it, and you've put a great show together. Thanks so much, Kristin. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from coolcleveland.com. Have a great week in cool Cleveland.